some of them are the same questions, and so if somebody goes back and reflects on the agenda, they can see if it's been answered. So that's just kind of so we can control a little bit of the agenda, and so everybody feels like they're being heard and all the questions are being addressed. So that's kind of how we talked about it.
It also gives a voice to the people who really would like to be here but can't be here, and we are now recording these so people can go back and watch and see what the answers.
We just wanted to make sure that everybody had access to it. So
is the agenda then posted somewhere with the answers so they can go back and read your notes?
We can certainly do. I don't know that we have been doing that, but we certainly can, and we can just put it right on the district website.
Isn't that what you've been doing? You just type in answers as we go.
I think Craig is saying if they aren't in attendance.
I don't know if I'm posting them though,
so they can, those people that were sending in emails, maybe they're not here, they could
see if their question was answered.
Yes,
they can see the answers to their questions.
So this is our page for this group, and let's look and see what
it just is. I think it takes you to the YouTube page.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but we can talk to Jackie about putting a little link on here so that people can see the minutes, and if they don't want to watch the video. What I have heard is people really enjoy just when they're cooking dinner, they turn the link on and they don't have to watch the video, but they can hear the conversations, which people appreciate. So.
I don't like to hear myself talk, so not so much.
Okay, I think at the last meeting we talked about, before we get too far into the agenda, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because the agenda is long, but this is when we first started meeting as a group, we talked about, why are we meeting, and these are the things that the group came up with, kind of their commitments. I need to change this to.
It needs to say parent community. Just
What?
That's we worded it. Community parent advocacy group on whole things. Just for consistency later, it's gonna bother me.
Thank you for catching that.
I would have just fixed it later.
Okay, so I think we had like 4 or 5 bullet 4. Maintain the conservative values of Lakeland Joint School District. I think a lot of people have moved here simply because of our values. Maintain a culture of trust and partnership between the district, staff, and parents. And maintain and support school board members, administrators, and teachers who champion excellence for our students. And then maintain support for our families' personal values and ethics in the classroom. And so for people who weren't here when we did this, I do want to talk about kind of the group was pretty intentional about choosing the word maintain, because they recognize that we have people who are new to our area from other places, and they really wanted to send the message, we're not here to change what we're doing. We just want to support the staff in continuing the work. So that's why the word maintain is there. They didn't come in and insinuate that these things weren't happening. It was really, they're already happening, we just want them to continue. Fair?
Yeah.
Okay. So is there anything in here that anybody wants to talk about changing, or that they have questions about?
I personally feel like it's still a really good fit, and sort of now having it the group been around for a while, it seems like it fits for kind of what the conversations that have been had and all of that.
How about people who weren't here and didn't participate? Are you comfortable with it? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. I did not read these ahead of time. So, classroom, libraries, and parental control brainstorm ideas. So Lynn and I have been really working with our librarians about what does this look like. We're watching the legislation coming through with regard to the bills at the state level that are coming through with regard to libraries. And we feel really confident that the things that we're reading right now, we've got written into our plans and our policies and our protocols. There will be a few little tweaks that we might have to make once something is put into law. There just might be a little language, like one of the things that I don't think we currently have in our policy and protocol is that we'll have a committee. Right now the bill says that just like with the curriculum committee, that 50% of the makeup must be non-educators, basically. So, so once those little details come out, then we'll add those, but we've got that started, and so, and feel really comfortable with that, and it definitely is in alignment with what's happening in the state. So then we start talking about classroom libraries. And having been a first grade teacher, it's impossible to teach kids how to read if we can't put books in their hands. So we have to figure out how to do this in a way that parents feel comfortable, it protects the teachers in the classroom, and we know we have good quality books that we're putting in the hands of kids. So one of the things that we talked about, this is a brainstorming, I actually put this on here because I just wanted to hear from this group. One of our brainstorms was just asking our K2 teachers, and then our 3-5 teachers, and then our middle level and high school teachers, but just to create for us, and this is a great job to give to a parent volunteer, but create a list for us of the books you currently have in your classroom libraries, so that we can start to just look at what do we have, and do we have any in here that would be of concern. I know, I think back to when I taught first grade, and I could say with 100% confidence I didn't have anything that any parent would ever have been concerned about in my classroom. But I think we just need to take a look, and so our plan is to kind of start creating the list, and then identifying if there are books on there that we feel not appropriate for K through 2, then we remove those, and kind of create like we've done even with our classroom novel sets and some of our supplemental books, a list of approved books, and then we can publish those, we can post them on the website, and then that way if parents, if there is a book in the classroom library that, so for example, and this is going to be an outlandish example, but the part that's hard about the library bills is that when you start talking about, unless we're really clear about how we define what's appropriate and not appropriate, we all have our own interpretation of that, right? So one of my favorite books to read to my first graders was Junie B. Jones, who is a little bit of uphill and not always respectful in how she interacts with people, but she's super funny in the way the author writes about her. It's really engaging, and it gets kids excited about the books. Some parents might not like that she's annoying and disrespectful, and they may not want their kids to read that. Totally fine, but that doesn't make it necessarily inappropriate for a K2 classroom. So we would still want to give parents the opportunity to say to the teacher, I really prefer that my child not read these books, that's what parent rights are for, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what we're thinking. So if you have other...
We also talked about that then once there's kind of that approved list, that is just like anything, the moment a new book wants to be entered, then it goes through the supplemental curriculum, and then there's just a process. So what we don't want is teachers trying to have to navigate, like, I have these 5 kids, their parents are okay with these 5 books. I mean, we can't manage that. So we have to have a system, because I said if we don't come up with a solid system that parents are comfortable with, it's approved, then we're saying no classroom libraries other than the school library, because that's not fair to a teacher. They can't handle that. That's too much. And sometimes in some classrooms you do have some sustained silent reading times, and sometimes it's I just got done with my work early, so it's 5 minutes, and for a teacher to try to have to stop what they're doing to manage that, that's a huge disruption to instruction. So we're trying to protect that, but also then allow parents to have some voice. So that was a hard one though, because a lot of times, like I know my first few years at each level that I taught, I mean, books were donated to me by parents. I went to yard sales, you're just like, you just want books in your classroom so kids have books. And so, I'm sure there are books that people don't even remember they have, because it's their stuff somewhere, and it's only if a kid doesn't have a library book, or then, whatever. So we're trying to just come up with some type of system to that. So, and there could be some, we haven't seen it at this point, but there could be some legislation that puts more stricter bans on the classroom library, and so then we'll change kind of our protocol at this point. So we are going to take the protocol to the board of just a discussion, just so they can kind of see where our brains are as far as we want to have a library committee I started putting all the definitions of what it means to be obscene, what the statute says about all of that. So I just took it directly out of law. So we are just kind of in the brainstorming, but we want the board to kind of see where we're going with that. And then at the point when whatever library bill passes this time around, we'll have to add in those waivers when it's done. So
And
kind of
will that be a separate policy from the
I don't know.
regular policy?
Well, and I think it will be more of a protocol, and then the policies are embedded and the policies will reflect that, but that will be up to the board how they decide to do that, but it will have to be something the board approves.
And the library bill actually includes language about having a committee that approves
Right.
the new library books, cause right now, the librarians are solely responsible for buying
Right.
those books, so, and putting them on the
And
shelves.
the
So I
three
would
laws that,
anticipate
yeah.
we would follow this same process.
the three laws that we've looked at, they're pretty central. There's a challenging process, there is a discontinuing process, and they're all pretty consistent. There might be some different vocabulary, but it's all pretty consistent that there is a committee that is a part of that. So, and we had already put that in our protocol, so I feel like we're on the right track, but there will be little things that we have to tweak. If they say, a discontinuing, you have to have 10 days, one of them said you have to have 15 days, we'll have to clean that up once, whatever bill passes, but, so right now we're just I just keep looking and we keep adding things as we get feedback and people have ideas, and then we'll take it to the board and they'll give some input, and then once whatever bill passes, and it doesn't sound like it's a if, it's when, whichever one does, then we'll clean that piece up too, to match whatever statute says, so that's kind of what we're doing.
I just want to throw something out there for the context when you're thinking about the classroom teacher libraries. You're talking about something that would evolve every year based on decisions that people make. So this year I have Lisa's child and I have Lynn's child in my classroom, and so I go through and I look at whatever is appropriate. Well, next year now you are in a different classroom and I have somebody else's, and now new people are coming through, so do I weed out books in my library? So you're asking classroom teachers.
No,
that
we're
could
just
be-
gonna create a list of approved books from the district level, just like we've done with our novel sets and all of the other things, and then if the teachers want to add a new book, once we get that all dialed in, then they're gonna have to go through the process that the law indicates.
So then I guess I was confused by what you were talking about earlier about parents letting teachers know.
If I were a classroom teacher and I have my approved books and Junie B. Jones is approved for the district, but I have a parent who has asked me not to have their child read Junie B. Jones, then I'm gonna do everything I can to make sure that
I
that
see what
doesn't
you're
happen.
It's not removed forever, it's just for that child work.
It's just teachers working with kids and with parents, which we've done for forever, so.
Lisa, so did I hear you say that if the board adopts the idea of a approved reading list, then the teachers would then have to go back and reevaluate their classroom libraries against that list and weed out what isn't on that? Did I hear
And
you
we're
say
gonna
that?
start by asking them to create a list for us of the books they currently
Okay.
have in their classrooms.
Yeah.
That's where we'll start. And we'll go through those books and make sure they're all appropriate, and if there are any that anybody feels aren't, then we'll pull those off, and then the whole district will know that we're not putting these in there. And we may have some books that are, appropriate for, like 5th, 6th, and 7th grade kids, but not appropriate for K2, just because the topics are maybe a little bit more mature. But if that's the case, then we just make sure that they're in the right classroom. But we do also wanna make sure that in our K2 classrooms, we have books that would be a 4th, 5th, or a 6th grade reading level, because we have kids who can read at that level. So it's not just about, in the classroom, it can't just be about grade band, because our kids need access, and some of our
We have to have
5th
different
grade
readability levels for
Right.
kids.
Some of our 5th graders are reading at a 3rd grade level, so we need to make sure that they have access to that. So we,
And
it's a work in progress.
It's
but-
a rough draft, I mean, we're
Right.
just trying to kind of get we wanna be out in front of it and not like in July when the bill's going, how are we putting this together? So we just wanna be really thoughtful and trying to get input, and so we're gonna show the board this month, and we'll show the elementary or the admin team this month too. There will be probably some feedback and tweaks from there. I've shared it out with a couple of people of just, can you give me some feedback, and so I imagine there will be several iterations before it's finalized.
I feel like we're at least headed down.
So if you wanna share with the board that you have willing, community volunteers who'll have, so you can count on me, I can't speak for other people, but I know you can say you have somebody at
Well, we
least
appreciate that.
You mean to make the list of the books in the
to
classroom?
help in either way,
Or
whether
Yeah.
it's.
just looking at the titles and.
Yeah, yeah, I would help too with the teachers.
We even put in the protocol, like, what the requirement would be if you wanted to be a committee member, because I think the one thing that we feel like is super important is that you have to be committed to read the book. So it's not just, you have review sites that we're finding are not as accurate as maybe we want them to
Yep.
be. Or they're pushing their own agenda on either side, and
Yep.
so just but we don't want one person reading the book, we want multiple people reading the book, and so how do we get copies of that book, and so then how can we really invest in it's not, if we're really gonna say yay or nay, we definitely want the books being read, and so it's not, so that's one of the things we put in there, so what would that commitment look like, what are we asking? So, we're trying to think of everything so that it's just really, really clear, so it's not just, again, parents can make decisions for their own individual child, but feeling like if you're making decisions for a whole group of children, we wanna make sure that all voices are being heard, so.
And I just wanna add a PS, cause I saw a couple heads nod about, review sites have different inputs. Just in terms of the list that we provided you, I'd say roughly 95% of the citations that we gave are not reviews, they're excerpts, and they're very different.
Yeah.
Excerpts
Yeah.
are the
Right.
exact lines from the book,
Right.
it's not someone's opinion.
Right.
Right,
So
and
just
I
FYI.
appreciate they actually put like where in the book you can
Yeah,
find that.
it's the
Yeah.
page number
And
and the
there
excerpt.
are actually some sites that will give you that, and then some will just say, 5 people have said that, whatever, so.
But that's not what we use.
Exactly,
so-
yeah. So, and I think currently, I do have the book review sites on there, because sometimes if you don't have the book and you can't find it, you can't read it, so we have to, but we're just not going to one site, we're going to multiple, and just, I think a preponderance of evidence is better than a singular piece, so.
But
And I
evidence is
prefer-
different than opinion.
I was just gonna
Right.
say, I would prefer the evidence over opinions, because the opinion comes from your own personal biases, so.
Right, that's what we're trying to get away
We're trying to get
from.
away from that.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee you've got some vintage teachers like you and me and you. With books in our libraries that are no reviews because they didn't exist and they aren't print anymore. And
Speak for yourself on the
She
veteran.
said, she didn't say veteran, she said vintage.
So,
Vintage
speak for
is
yourself.
fine.
vintage is classier than veteran,
Yeah.
unless you're talking about the service.
So, Sarah, you are currently in a classroom.
I am.
Does any of this cause you heartburn?
It does.
So talk to us a little bit about
I
that.
probably have over 2,000 books in my
Yeah.
classroom.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah.
And to be quite honest with you, I spend a lot of time working beyond my contract hours, probably 3 to 4 hours a day. And I am not adding more work to that. So,
But is that
listing
something,
my books,
but is that something you could ask a parent volunteer to kind of sit?
I probably could.
That's what I would do, I wouldn't ask.
You can also just take pictures or video
I could.
of your books.
I could.
Anyone can go.
Anything we're asking them to do.
I will say that this topic has come up, over the last couple of years, in conversations with other teachers throughout the district. And I will say what I've heard other teachers say, they'll pack their books up.
Mhm.
I've heard
They're
that
gonna
too.
box them up,
If they have to do the inventory or if they're being scrutinized.
either.
Huh?
Yeah, well, if the law passes, we don't have
Right.
a leg to stand on, like.
And
it
I
is what it is.
totally understand that, I do 100%.
Why would they pack them up? I guess I don't understand that.
Just taking the time to go through every book.
And then have.
So you
what
don't
I-
have to go through every book, would you? You would just have to catalog which books exist, which could be as simple as like a 30-second video.
Perhaps.
Or
Times two.
I
volunteers
don't
who
need a
would come
30-second
in
video.
and
She's
I
got
would do the
2,000
inventory
books.
for you.
2,000
I
books.
respect
That's
your
modest.
time.
Yeah.
I think yeah, 30-second video depends on the
And,
thing.
and I will say, all the books in my library were books
What
beyond
grade do you?
children.
What
I
grade
mean,
do
it
you
would be
teach?
an inventory once a
Third
year.
grade.
Yeah, but.
So a lot of those
So
books
did
probably
they
have
ask every
on the
time we
spot.
add books?
Okay, so you guys, we have
Right.
lots
Right.
of side
Right.
conversations
Right.
going
Take a
on,
picture.
so.
But here, I'm a parent here, like,
Yeah,
I'm,
no, but I
my
do
parent hat is
care,
on.
but I do care about what the staff is also thinking, and so I want you to hear me say this loud and clear, I'm not gonna ask our staff to do this work. So if that means we're taking advantage of
But I
community
think that-
volunteers who are willing to go into your classroom and sit in your
I
library.
think that's what's
and
gonna
write
have
that
to
down.
be, because now you're asking our parent volunteers who are volunteering to do other things that our teachers are already counting on for, like helping with Wednesday folders and helping, you know, do flashcards with kids. Now you're asking the takeaway from that thing. So if you set your committee up, I think it should be your committee's responsibility. Cause I just did some quick numbers. You're talking over probably 15,000 books in my classrooms alone, my school.
I was thinking, we're talking about 1 million books.
Yeah,
maybe
that's
more.
what you're just, in Twin Lakes alone, and that was just me being conservative with my K-3.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I know it's gonna take work, we are just trying to get ahead of whatever
Mhm.
laws coming our way, so.
But I don't think it's fair to put it on teachers to take their classroom volunteers to do it either.
Well, some parents some parents come in and they don't wanna sit and read with kids and
Yeah.
they'd rather be standing at the copy machine and copying books, cause
I mean, I have a
that's
parent
their
volunteer, I do it.
Yeah.
I would do it too.
Okay, so I think we can work, and we can work through
Yeah.
this committee, I know we have people who are committed to making sure that we get this done, but,
Do you wanna start in kindergarten or fifth?
I would do the whole school.
okay, are there any other ideas around this that we haven't thought about that you think might be helpful?
I was just thinking if you kind of like framed it around how you frame looking at curriculum, that might make it a little bit easier. And it also might not have, a lot more intensity to it. And it would also take out some biases if you stuck with like a curriculum framework, and how you say, okay, like amplify, ask Amplify to take it back and make some amendments to it. So I think framing it around that would make this process a little bit easier and something that everybody has in black and white and it's not gray. Kind of gets rid of those biases a little bit. That this is what we have to do, this is what, you know, Lakeland is set up to do with our curriculum. We want our classroom books to follow our curriculum.
I would just say my goal in looking at all the laws and the law that almost passed last year, some of the language is really subjective as inappropriate, and that could mean 5 different things with 20 different people. There's a penalty attached to it. Last year it was $2,500. This year the one we're seeing is $250. And what I don't want is, for all the things that are on the teacher's plate, is that, you know, there's a book that a child found that they want to read that that a parent thinks is inappropriate, and they're getting charged, or there's some issue there. So we 100% want to protect parent rights, but I also feel like we have to protect
our
teachers and our librarians from that element, and so we don't want to do anything that's going to take away from instructional time and anything to deal with their management time. So we're just brainstorming ways, like if this is coming and classroom libraries are going to become a thing, and you know, we just want to make sure that we're protecting all parties involved in there. And, all of the bills have a penalty if there's a book that a kid gets that somebody thinks is inappropriate. So then how do we get out in front of that? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
But you get out in front of it with your curriculum policy, so I'm saying if you use that same framework for the classroom libraries, it might make it a little easier.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of what the bill for the
Yeah.
library books outlines, is you have to have a committee, it's all gotta go through the committee, so it does take a little bit of pressure off, but still, even having gone through the committee, if a parent finds a book that there's something in there that they don't like, it's, you know, right now, the one we're looking at says $250.
But there's a cure process in there, it's not an automatic
Right, there's a
assessment of a fine.
30-day, we have 30
And
days.
one-
Yeah,
in
say
one
you
of-
get a
in
say.
one of the bills,
Yeah.
in one of the
I would
bills.
tell you that there are definitely people who would like to make a living off of earning this kind of money. That is
Scammers, yes.
I mean, we're dealing with it.
Is the
in
person
other
making the
areas.
complaint getting paid?
Yes.
Yes.
Really? No, that
Yes.
will incentivize hunters.
But Marianne was just saying there's a cure process. It's
There's-
not just
yeah.
like, I found a book and now give me money.
But that's
They
only in
can
one of the
fix
bills that we've
it.
read,
Okay.
not in all of them.
Well,
And
that
in the
was
bill that
one
almost
clean.
passed last year, there was no cure. I mean, it was
And it was $2,500 for every
This is
incident.
Incident.
So there's a
Incident.
bill
So if,
Oh, for everything in the book?
Yeah.
So if a book had 25 pages
book
of,
with inappropriate material,
oh my
and
God.
no longer in somebody complains about it.
Oh,
Then it gets too
no,
many
no,
people.
No,
I've seen
but
the
last
guy-
year's bill specifically
the-
says
the
per
complainant got
instance
some, well,
within
how
the
many
book.
hours it was.
So if you're,
Which is not
if
the worst
you don't
thing, as
like
long
the
as everything
language,
is clear.
and that you
Yeah,
find
as long
5
as the
pages
definitions
with
are
that
clear.
language
The system
on
will
it,
throw it
that's
back.
5
Yeah,
times.
any-
25.
Let's move, cause that's dead.
Right,
Yeah.
so I just,
You know,
we
Yeah.
just, there's
So,
a lot
I
of,
said, so the person who
in-
complains is the one.
there's a
that's-
lot of people that we have to protect in all this. We need to make sure we're protecting kids, we need to make sure we're protecting
Yeah, the
parents'
person who
rights, we
complains.
can't lose sight
Can
of
we
our staff
have
either,
one
and we have to
conversation, guys? Can't Sorry, hear Greg. this end.
do right by our staff.
Maybe you should move
You know what
closer.
I mean? I just, there's,
I was
we
trying to
need
ask
to
a
protect
question, you're not the
everybody.
daddy.
Okay, moving on.
No, I'm just respectful of the person running the meeting.
And,
You know that
so
respect, don't you?
Sorry, go ahead. Okay.
concerning library books have been founded on libraries. What is the plan for addressing this issue? This has been an ongoing, this is ongoing work
for
we've
5.
been doing
Okay.
all year
I'd be ashamed
this
if I was you.
year, and we started last year, right? We started this process last year.
Yes.
Yeah, so, so we definitely, Mariana has been, a huge help, so she provides lists to our librarians of books that, that she has found on the site that she looks at with some really concerning, content. And some of those books have been on our shelves that were purchased in the 80s and the 90s, and we just immediately removed them, and so they're no longer in our, they're not in our destiny, so you can't go in and find them anymore, and they're not on the shelves, so we are removing them.
We are doing a really thorough process of just looking at everything, and then if something gets spotlighted, and we have found that, like, we've taken it off the shelf, but they forgot to take it off the Destiny, so we're definitely not done, but we're making huge gains in that area.
And the vast majority of the books that we've found that have been concerning have been at the high school level. And all of them have been adult books, not young adult books, but adult books. And so, so we've just taken those off the shelves.
I mean, that's the low hanging fruit, right?
Right.
Is the obscene adult books in libraries for minors. I mean, that's
Yeah.
appropriate.
I'd be
Could you-
embarrassed to read them.
Well, yeah, Lynn, would you say more about what you just said about we're being very vigilant about assessing everything?
We
What-
meet with the librarians, 2 of them, are kind of our library leads every month, and we're looking at the list and ongoing lists, and then they're working with their people to get them pulled, and then checking Destiny. It's just because Destiny is updated, if a new book comes in, or, we're talking about what our process is for how we're ordering brand new books, so it's just created this, like, we have to have better systems around that, so that's what we're working on. It's just, it doesn't happen overnight, so we're trying to, so, and it's funny because all the books that happen and they read it and the librarian's like, did not know that was there, so it's, we're just trying to make sure that it's the appropriate grade band within the grade band of that school, and then some of the books that have been removed are more the adult ones, and, it was ordered in the 70s and people don't know it's there, and then when they read it, and if you put a clip from the actual book, it's like, did not know that existed, and so we're just removing them, and we really haven't had pushback because it's that glaringly inappropriate.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And I don't think this isn't a new phenomenon, because as Lynn was talking, I was just thinking back to my high school years. I read the book Peyton Place.
Oh.
I checked it out from
It's an
my
education,
I checked it out from my school library, and I read it, and I wouldn't want that on the shelves.
Everybody under 40 has a blank stare here.
Right.
That's okay, it's a very old movie.
Right, but
Lisa, what book was that?
Peyton Place.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So, and that was, that was.
You know what, ironically, it seemed
Great show.
tame compared to what's
Like
like
it's
on
I know. It's a TV
now.
show and it's.
I don't have any idea what you're talking
But-
about. To
Is
you
it like
veterans.
50 Shades of Grey?
No, it's not quite like
It's-
that. It was.
It's a young girl who's been abused by her father,
Oh.
she ends up pregnant, she has an abortion, it's illegal at
Everybody
the time.
talks about
I mean,
Oh my gosh.
it's all the things that we're talking about that we don't want our kids necessarily reading about in a high school, in a school library.
Yeah.
But I just throw that out there because I don't think this is new. I think what is new is we have people who are paying attention to what's actually in there.
And things have gotten raunchier. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just,
Well, the
raunchy is
acceptance-
mainstream
the
now.
acceptance
It's
of
just-
it.
Yeah.
Okay, who is evaluating the appropriateness of new books purchased? I feel like we kinda talked about that up here, are we okay with moving past that one? I just wanna try and get.
So big kudos, I mean, thank you for
We're trying.
embracing
It's
this.
not perfect yet, we still are finding things, and, I just shared in our parent, Lakeland Highlights that this is a work in progress, and if you do find something that's concerning, please be sure to share that with your librarian so that we can address it, because and that's come up even here, I think Jacqueline asked the question, what do you want us to do if we find something? Tell somebody so we can take care of the problem.
So can I just throw out an example that I'm interested in how you would respond to this? So literally it's a next door conversation that I'm having with somebody about a book that is about this specific book, but there's a genre about this whole author, it's her shtick is how she writes this series of books, about two girls, they're twins, identical twins, that's the book is called, Identical, and they're 15, and their father has been abusing them since they was a child, you know, sexual abuse, really egregious, that is described graphically in the book. And then of course the girls, you know, it's normalized, so then they become, you know, sex addicts and you throw in drugs and it's just horrible. But this young woman on next door is challenging me saying, how could you? I read this with my mother when I was a teenager, and we had conversations that were very constructive because it helped me learn about the inappropriateness of abuse and how horrible this is, and some kid who's been abused could heal from this. So, I mean, I know what I would say to her, but I'm more interested in how you would respond to that if you were challenged in that way.
Well, that's what the public libraries are for, I suppose.
And I guess if there is a parent that's how they feel, then, I mean, the way we're setting this up is they have the right to choose that for their child. If you're asking me personally, I feel like there's enough ugliness and yuck in this world, and we have such the way we view sex as a society, and you can't turn on TV anymore without it being in your face, and so I don't know that we need to push that or promote that. Those are conversations with parents, and so, but that's what I would want for my own kids. I did not want my kids to watch Game of Thrones, and I have a 21-year-old and I can't watch it with him because I just don't even want the sound to be around my son. But he's 21, he's gonna be 22, you know, that's me, but the beauty of what we created is every parent gets to choose for their child. That's the best part. So if you are comfortable.
But we don't need to have those books in our
Yeah.
libraries for them to choose from, so they can buy the
So
books.
if I were to distill what you're saying, your criteria are, if a book has sexually explicit information in it, it is
Well, the
not
law
something
says
you
you
want on
can't.
your
The law
shelf.
says
The
that
law
you
says you
cannot.
can't.
The new law that's coming.
I just
And
wanna make
that's-
sure.
and
Well, it
that's
hasn't
what-
passed yet, so.
Right, but that's what we've written
But-
into our
but
protocol,
even, I mean,
is
I
that
guess
definition.
I would push back on that. The new law is specific to library books, but there are existing laws that talk about obscene material being in
Right.
schools.
Right.
And that's been around for a long time. I just think to Lisa's point, it's just been ignored, and people, because
Well,
it
you have an
doesn't.
exemption, that's why it's ignored, because schools and universities have an
But
exemption.
at the same, it still says kind of, not really, you're not supposed to be promoting and pushing this out, and so I just think it's bringing to light what's already existed, and so the definitions are concrete, and so I think that's what we have to follow, and again, as a parent, if you choose with some of the other topics that maybe are a little bit grayer, maybe books and that youth, that could be a little bit grayer. I mean, some parents aren't gonna want their kids to even read about kissing. Some people are gonna say you can't watch a movie without other things, so like this is vanilla compared. So the beauty of our system is parents get to choose. But we do have to honor and the law is pretty concrete, the definitions
But that's
are
not what
concrete.
I'm hearing you say. When you say parents get to choose, presumes that the book is on the shelf
Not
there
our
and
shelf.
accessible.
No,
Okay.
they're saying that if a
Yeah.
parent wants to choose to give that content to their child in their home,
Gotcha.
that's
Yeah.
their
But
right.
not
The
available to the school.
is
Yeah.
not
I got
gonna
it.
give that to
Yeah.
I'm clear.
Yeah.
Because as you said, the criminal statutes are crystal clear. I mean, they're
Crystal.
explicitly defined. And that's what I hear you saying you're adopting for the school library. It doesn't matter that we're not talking about criminal affronts. We're talking about the definitions have been explicitly defined, and you are using those definitions to evaluate the books. I think it's important that the public understands that those are your criteria, because this is not some subjective opinion that,
No.
oh, it makes me feel squeamish. It's, the law has existed since 1972 in Idaho that explicitly describes what is criminally unlawful vis-a-vis materials to minors, and you are applying that to the books here.
And the new law is applying it as well, if it passes.
Yeah,
I
and
got,
so
I got
it's,
here a couple
right.
minutes late.
it's in our, in the protocol that we're taking on
Okay.
board, yeah.
That's very
Did I-
clear.
So we're not, this group, this whole thing is not about reaching anything beyond the schools. This is just
Right.
This is
within the
support.
libraries, within the schools.
What is accessible to kids in our public
Right,
schools.
behind the desks, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, does the district approve scholastic book fairs on campuses, or do the individual principals, and then we definitely have concerns about scholastic. So historically, the principals work with their PTU presidents, because oftentimes it's the PTUs who are running the book fairs in our schools. And Scholastic for a very long time was a great partner, and they put out I mean, that's where I bought my Little House on the Prairie books for my classroom, and the Berenstain Bears books, and you know, so it hasn't always been what it is right now. And this year we did have a situation where we talked, the elementary principals as a team, we talked about the concerns that were coming from parents about Scholastic. At several of our schools, they already were kind of locked in with their book fair, and so we just asked them to make sure that whatever was presented to the kids was gonna be appropriate. So I feel like they did their due diligence. We did have a couple of principals who were able to change and not go with Scholastic, so Garwood didn't use Scholastic this year.
Apple didn't use it.
And so, and then through this group, I think it was at our September meeting, I just went back and looked at our agenda. We actually brainstormed, I think there are probably 6 to 8 different companies that schools could use that are good alternatives to this. So moving forward next year, that is the intention, is that we won't use Scholastic and we'll use some of these others.
We actually have it on our list, our protocol, of here's some resources to look at different, and so.
Yeah, so. But the principals it's the principal's responsibility to work with either their PTUs or their librarian, who's ever gonna help run it, so. Any questions about that?
We really are trying to be comprehensive in every approach to a book.
Well, I went to NCTE this year, and the books that they're writing for K-5 and YA, I was shocked.
What
it
is
was
it you went to?
the National, English Teachers Conference, NCTE, and it's all book publishers. So I had Scholastic, all the big guys, Disney, and then also too, NCTE pushes this big agenda on, everything under the bus. And it was absolutely amazing to see the books that were being rolled out. And it was kind of funny, because the conservative books nobody wanted, and so I was like, oh, can I have that, can I? So I brought back a bunch of books. But it was.
Where was it held?
Oh, it was in Columbus.
Are you a teacher?
No,
No.
I'm just.
It's awesome that you took the time to go do that.
I was working.
Okay. Okay, can you tell us about the ELA curriculum used in the middle and high schools? Is it called Collections, and do the students and teachers like it? So we went through a full district adoption last year, and our middle and high school teachers participated in that adoption, and they looked through all of the new content, and they felt like the textbook we currently use, which is Collections,
The older version.
was better than the new things that were out there. They didn't wanna have to go through and carefully read every single story to make sure there weren't some issues within the story that you know, CRT type things that we don't want in our classrooms. They felt like they've got their instructional pacing calendars dialed in, and that they know what they're teaching, and the stories are complementary to the standards. And then they also, have their novels that have been approved by the board that they use. So, they definitely, they were the ones who made the decision, to continue to use what they have been using instead of take a chance on something new that might not be as good.
And their kind of bigger push was, they felt like the novels they're using, they chose to use more authentic text and felt like for the short time that they use collections, it's a few stories, but they're just more doing the novels, and feeling like having kids actually in the literature instead of just a little tiny piece of it was better than spending a bunch of money on a little tiny piece. So we really talked to them about, just enhancing their novel sets in the classroom, with study guides and doing what they're currently doing, so it was just, they're actually, kids are in literature instead of just a anthology with a little clip of a story, so.
Any questions about that? Or
And the
concerns?
curriculum is good for 6 or 7 years? How long do we keep it?
6 years.
Okay, and then we reevaluate.
Yep. Yep. So. Okay, can you show again how to get to the new link for the school and budget finances? Yes, I can. So we'll go back to this, back to home. So when you log into the district website, I just really like our new webpage, it's here. So if you go right here to financials, and then down to district transparency, to right on that financials is right on the front page, and then click on that. And then you have all of your, so you can look at our audits, you can look at the annual budget, so here's the current year budget, and then the previous year budgets, our district expenditures, our contracts, and then this is new, our new CFO does this, and the board, is super happy with the level of detail that is on this document. I can't really blow it up too much for you, or it'll go off the page, but it's all funds, so this is just kind of, an overview of the budget, but then you go by fund, so here's our general fund, revenues, and then expenditures, and there's a lot in general fund that comes out, and then we have our federal forest fund, we get a small amount of money from that, so there's the revenues and then how we're spending it. Our facility funds, and this I think might be the new fund that, I'll have to look, that Jessica, I don't know if this is, this might be where our money is, I'll have to look, this one I don't know, I'm not gonna say because I don't know for sure. I don't know if this is the one where the board moved money for, capital projects, and this is that fund,
I don't see the money in there, so I'm not certain that's the one.
Yeah, I don't, so I'll ask Jessica which one this is, cause it's not our plant facility fund either,
Yeah.
so it's facility funds.
Where did you have to go to find this prior to, is this something new on the webpage?
It's always been on the webpage, but it was as an assistant superintendent and then as a superintendent, I couldn't find it. So if I can't find it on our own website, I don't know how we expected our patrons to be able to do it. So when we upgraded our district website and had more control over how we designed it and what its tabs were, I just asked Jackie to make sure that this is a tab right on the very front page of the district website, so it's very easy to find. But all of our funds are here, so this is our base, before and after school enrichment. There's the state has a Securing Our Future grant, so we got a $220,000 grant from the state to fix our fencing. Because when our vulnerability assessments were done, the person who did it said that our schools should have 6-foot fences instead of 4-foot fences. So starting March 1st, we will be every 4-foot fence in our district will come down, and we will be putting 5 or 6-foot fences up. So that's what that is. We have literacy dollars.
With the exception of the preschool one, but that's within a 6-foot fence.
Right, yeah, yeah. So anyway, all of our funds are here, and not just the general fund, so the public can really get a better idea of how much money we are getting and in what categories and how we're spending it, so. Do you want me to put, I can put the link
It's probably a good idea.
right to this, in this document. Anything else about, whoops, that's not what I wanted. Anything else about this particular part of the website that, any questions that people had? Okay, so clarification on some expenses or programs. Summer school program, IDEA Part B, stipends, community services program, do I see any waste? Okay, so let's start here. So summer school program, we get, every student who participates in summer school, it's a credit recovery program, and so the students have to be identified as at-risk students. And then we get reimbursement from the state for those kids to be in attendance during summer school. And so we run the program. Our teachers make $40 an hour to be there teaching during summer, and we run it so it's it's supposed to be budget neutral, and that of course sometimes depends on how many kids we have in attendance, but we try to run it as close as possible to budget neutral. It's not intended to be a money maker for us. IDEA Part B is federal dollars that they come to us from the federal government specifically to support special education, and that's all they can be used for. The federal government in 1972, when public law 1492 became a part of our public schools. They were supposed to fund special education at 40%, and they've never even come close. So we get a very small amount of money from the federal government. The state gives us a little bit of money for special education, and then the general fund funds the rest. It's probably the part of our budget where we can budget money for things that we end up going over, because if a kiddo moves into our district with an IEP that requires services we don't currently have, we legally have to provide them, which means we have to hire people, we have to buy programs, we have to buy assistive technology, we have to do whatever's in that IEP. And you don't know that at the beginning of the year, so we base the budget on the kids who are here, but we don't know who's moving in.
That can include medical, it could include a full-time nurse, and this is the one area that if the district is going to get in trouble and be sued, it's the one area where 90% of the time it will be sided with parents, because if they're in your district and you have to provide FAPE and you have to provide access, so depending on which kid that is, you don't get to deny that. So
and it's illegal for us to say to a parent, we can't provide that because we don't have the money for it.
So is it fair to say that most of the time the budget runs over on that line item?
100%.
Okay, if it's 100% of the time, then is it reasonable and legit to build in a 10%, 20% buffer to allow for the guaranteed overages?
Trailing year average or something to
You
predict
try, but it's just, it's hard, it's not easy, but yeah.
Right, but I'm saying, if you can look back historically and say, on average, we run 20% over budget, can you build in a 20% buffer?
Well, so the way the budget gets built, it's not really built that way.
You have to have a
So,
balanced budget.
So the budget is based on, we have this many people, and this is how much money we're gonna pay for them. We have this much in purchase services.
It has to be on actuals, it can't be on forecasted.
But you always put in a buffer because a little bit to the best of your ability, because you know that's gonna happen.
But that's why we also try really hard to have a healthy fund balance, because when we go over, if we have the healthy fund balance, we can use that money, so. So that one's, has always been really tricky. Stipends, our board is trying really hard to reduce the number of stipends we have, because it makes it really hard for community members to get a true sense of how much money people are making. If you have their base salary and then they have like 10 to 12 different stipends and you have to go out and kind of find where they are. But in Idaho, when we hire a teacher, we have to put them on a 190-day contract. So we have some staff members who are teachers who, like our counselors, they're on the teacher salary schedule. They work more than 190 days, but we can't write them a contract that is more than 190 days. So we have to do the standard 190-day contract, and then we do a supplemental contract for additional days. That's the stipend. So we have a lot of stipends based on staff who work more than that 190 days. We also have all of our athletic coaches, because the other part in Idaho that a lot of people don't understand is that Idaho law says that if you're paying me $68,000 this year to teach, you legally cannot pay me less next year. So we can't add those additional things to their base salary, because now it becomes their base salary and we can't pay them less. So if we added it to their regular contract and then they stopped being the head football coach, we can't take that stipend back out. So while it seems inauthentic sometimes to have all of these stipends, that's the reason, is we have to protect the base contract, so that we're not obligating the district to continue to pay something when that work might not be continuing.
It
If that
plays
makes
into
sense.
PERSI, it plays into retirement, it plays in, so the base contract has to stay very just clean, and so.
But we have a lot of staff who do a lot of extra work for us, and so we need to pay them for that, and that's why we have as many stipends.
And
as
I
we
would
do.
say for as many people staff that we pay to do extra, to Sarah, we do have a lot of staff that they're in those buildings till 5 or 6 o'clock at night, they're getting there at 7 o'clock in the morning, their contract is 8 to 4 and they're well above and they don't get paid for it at all. So we have great staff and they step up, but there are certain days that we do stipend, but we have a lot of people that aren't stipend for all of their time across every school.
You were gonna ask
Yeah,
something?
I'm want to clarify on that, or ask a clarifying question. So are you saying that if we pay a teacher $50,000 for teaching, and they also are the football coach and they get paid, it's called $5,000 extra for that, so then their salary while they're doing that is $55,000. The next year they're no longer the football coach? Are you saying we're still paying them $55,000?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's why
okay.
You're paying them the
Okay,
50.
thank you.
If we had taken that $5,000 that we were paying them and added it to their 190-day
I understand, okay.
base contract.
So keeping it as a stipend allows
Allows-
us to do that?
Yes.
I got it, okay.
Yeah. And that's why the stipends exist. And we have so many people who wear so many different hats. But we don't put it into the base salary, because that we're then bound by that.
And then is there stipends also for either certain levels of education or
From the
for
state.
certificates, things like that?
Yeah, so the state provides money to us to give a stipend for teachers who, after they get their initial certification, in order to maintain our certification, every 5 years, teachers have to provide evidence to the state that we've taken at least 6 credits of continuing education. So there's an incentive from the state that when they get to they call it's a BA plus 24. So you've gotten your bachelor's, you've got your initial certification, and now you have 24 additional education credits on top. There's a stipend that comes from the state, and that's just flow through money that goes, but it's a stipend, it's not part of their base salary. And then if you get a master's degree, there's a different amount of money, it's a little bit more, that is a stipend. And so they would have their base contract, and then they have a supplemental contract for their master's stipend from the state. And we don't put the stipends all together on one either, so
So you split those out?
Right, so if I'm Kelsey Badger and I'm Lakeland High School varsity volleyball coach, she's got her base salary for her job, she's got her stipend for her master's, well, she doesn't, cause she's an administrator and we don't get that, but if she were a teacher, she would
Okay.
get that. Then she would get her stipend for her volleyball coaching, and they are all separate. So, as things fall off, I'm no longer coaching, so I'm not gonna get that
That's
stipend.
cost
Mhm.
Aren't there, are there stipends for like leadership programs, or what kind of other stipends are there just generally that float around out there?
We have, so we have some people so we have a counselor who is our lead counselor. She, is our liaison between Heritage Health. She's our liaison, between the core group and Coeur d'Alene. She's our liaison between.
All the counselors.
But even just outside resources, she's the one who brings all the information back. She spends countless hours outside of her contracted day doing the work of the district. And then she meets monthly with Lynn and I to talk about counseling issues. So she gets a stipend for being the lead counselor and doing that other work, to keep everybody else informed so that,
But a couple years ago, the state used to allocate leadership dollars for every building so that you could have leads and, kind of teacher leads within the building. But a couple years ago, that went away. So for probably, 6 or 7 years? How many years did we have leadership dollars?
I think it ended my first year as principal.
I think it was, we had it the whole time Becky was here, so probably 6.
Yeah, but then they went away with it, so now it's just, like our library leads, they're doing, and the idea of the stipend for the lead position, it's everything that's above and beyond your contract time, so,
We have a lead nurse, we have a lead counselor, we have two lead librarians who are really leading the work we were talking about earlier, so.
and this is all beyond what their normal scope of their job would be.
Are those negotiated in the contract? Is that will they be negotiated with the next contract? That amount, how those stipends are, the amount of the stipends, I guess I would say.
They're not part of the negotiations
No.
with the association, and so it's really kind of dependent, and I saw Jessica poke her head in here and then she walked out, but, it's based really on what financially we can actually afford. So, but we try to look at, if we were gonna use $25 an hour as the pay for this outside work, how many hours over the course of the year are you putting in? And so, for our lead counselor, she definitely puts in over 100 extra hours over the course of the school year, so, her stipend is, I think, $3,000, so, but that's the formula we use, but it's outside of the negotiated agreement with the teachers.
Thank you.
You mentioned summer school, is that solely state funded or is some of our levy money also?
No, solely
Okay.
state funded. I'm trying to capture what we were talking, this is hard for me to take notes and also
Sorry.
be the one talking, so, especially now that you're asking me to post them, I want to at least have something in here that people will read and understand.
Nose goes.
Well, and then I guess the last thing in here, and it is 5 o'clock, so we'll stop here, but, somebody asked in this question, do I see any waste in the district that needs to be addressed? I feel like we're really lean, so I don't feel like there's waste. One of the things we have to look at is we employ more teachers than the state pays for, and so we have a budget workshop tonight with the board at 6, and that's part of the conversation is, can we continue to afford that? So that's not waste, because we need every single person we have to run the programs that we have, but if we're gonna ever look at trying to wean ourselves off of a supplemental levy, and I honestly don't know if that's possible with the way that we run our district, with our small neighborhood schools, but we are sending out, I'm bringing it to the board, next Wednesday at the board meeting, we are sending out a flyer, and it's got 5 questions, and we're mailing it to every single household, and it has a QR code, so it's super easy. It's literally a 5-question survey, but the questions are, recognizing that it costs us more than what we receive from the state to run small neighborhood schools, do you support this concept? Would you support a bond to build a new school? Would you support a smaller bond to add additional classrooms to existing schools. Do
Give you those card.
would you support a continuation of our supplemental levy? Just trying to get a little bit of information from our community members, because our community has changed so much and we have to run another levy next year. So I am interested just to know what the appetite is from community members. And then the last question is just open, and just please tell us from your perspective, what is most important to you with regard to the school district? And we may have some people who are living on a very fixed income who might tell us the most important thing to me is that the district run on the money from the state and not from the community members. We're gonna get that, but it'll be interesting to see what percentage that is, because we know those people are out there, and we're trying really hard to balance between how to run our programs that are meeting the needs of our kids and our parents and our community. And I do think, and I've said this lots of times, strong schools are good for everybody. If you're living in a district where the schools are failing, your property values are going to tank. So strong schools are important to everybody. But sometimes that means the community has to help us.
It should be at the top of the paper.
Strong schools are important to it's just so true. Our graduation rates just came out and they are super high again. Mountain View Alternative High School, 91% of their seniors graduated in 4 years. And it's an alternative school. People go into that school behind the credits. The average for Idaho is 41% and we're at 91%.
That's incredible.
It is incredible, and it's because we are doing such a good job with the money that our taxpayers are giving us. So I can't think of anywhere that I would say, oh, we could cut here. I mean, we looked at the budget that we were left last year and realized that we were going to be cutting into our fund balance, and we did everything we could to try to avoid that, and we really struggled to find places where we could cut and not impact classrooms.
I think the only area, and I would say it's wasteful, but just that we're super intentional, is about just new expenditures. It's like for, books, supplemental, just various things. I mean, I think you always have to have an eagle eye on that, watching it closely. So that's just best practice. So.
And we're asking the question, so we do get requests from teachers who will say, can we buy this program because it looks really good? Well, we already have a couple of programs that are really good, so why do we need to pay for another program? We should be getting good at the ones that we've got. So we are pushing back a little bit and asking those questions, but
I know.
But we do have to stop soon to get the room ready for our board meeting.
But if you don't want to